You're watching WorldScope, where we bring clear insight into the stories shaping our world. Today we turn our attention to the Israel-Lebanon border, a narrow stretch of land burdened by decades of tension and uneasy calm. Recent reports of renewed clashes and troop movements are raising questions. Is this another brief flare-up, or the sign of something larger taking shape? For more than 40 years, the frontier between Israel and Lebanon has been one of the most fragile fault lines in the Middle East. The boundary known as the Blue Line was drawn by the United Nations in the year 2000, after Israel withdrew from southern Lebanon following nearly 2 decades of occupation. The withdrawal officially ended open conflict, but never resolved the underlying disputes. The small farms of Sheba, claimed by Lebanon but controlled by Israel, remain a symbolic flashpoint that both sides reference when tension rises. On the Lebanese side, the armed group Hezbollah has become both a political party and a heavily armed militia. It emerged in the early 1980s during Lebanon's civil war and gained prominence for fighting Israeli forces in the south. Today, Hezbollah holds seats in Lebanon's parliament and runs a vast social network, but its military wing operates largely independently of the central government. On the Israeli side, towns near the border live under constant monitoring, with radar, observation towers, and patrols supported by UN peacekeepers known as UNIFIL, the United Nations interim force in Lebanon. For over 2 decades, the region has balanced between quiet and confrontation, a delicate rhythm that can shift in a single night. In recent weeks, cross-border incidents have multiplied. Both sides accuse the other of provocation. Israeli officials allege that Hezbollah has established new observation posts under the guise of environmental organizations. Lebanese authorities claim Israel has violated airspace dozens of times this month alone, sending surveillance drones and fighter jets over villages and farmland. What began as scattered exchanges has widened, with rockets and shells forcing evacuations in northern Israel and displacing families in southern Lebanon. Local residents describe nights spent in shelters and days spent checking the skies for aircraft. UN observers have urged restraint, warning that a single miscalculation could ignite a larger confrontation that neither government truly seeks. To understand why this border matters, we have to look beyond it. Hezbollah, backed financially and militarily by Iran, remains one of the most powerful non-state forces in the world. Its arsenal, according to various estimates, includes more than 100,000 rockets capable of striking deep into Israel. Israel views this capability as an existential threat and maintains that its surveillance and preemptive actions are defensive in nature. The two sides last fought a full-scale war in 2006. A 34-day conflict that left more than 1,000 people dead and devastated infrastructure across Lebanon. That war ended without a decisive victory and with both sides claiming success, but the scars and the mistrust have never faded. Since then, the frontier has seen countless smaller exchanges. Occasional skirmishes have been contained through back-channel communications involving the United Nations and intermediaries in Europe or the Gulf. Each time, both sides step back from escalation, not because of reconciliation, but because of calculation. Neither government wants to repeat the destruction of 2006, yet both continue preparing for the possibility. The United Nations and several European governments have called for calm. Washington has urged both sides to de-escalate, while France, historically tied to Lebanon, has stepped up diplomacy in Beirut. UNIFIL has increased patrols and communication hotlines to prevent misunderstandings. So far, both governments insist they are not seeking war, but statements alone may not prevent one. History shows that border tensions here often evolve faster than diplomacy can react. For civilians, the uncertainty is constant. In northern Israel, towns such as Kiryat Shmona, Metchala, and Nahariya rehearse evacuation plans. Schools occasionally move classes underground, and local authorities coordinate with the military on emergency alerts. Across the border, southern Lebanese villages endure crop damage and power cuts, with residents relying on generators when transformers are struck. Farmers work fields under the sound of drones, Children attend classes interrupted by air raid sirens. Yet daily life continues. Shops open, families gather for meals, and communities cling to routine as a form of quiet resistance to fear. Residents on both sides describe life defined less by peace than by the absence of new headlines, a fragile normal built on vigilance. Beyond the border, regional players are watching closely. Iran continues to frame Hezbollah's activities as deterrence against Israel, while Israel views Iran's presence in Lebanon and Syria as direct provocation. The United States and European Union fear that any open conflict could draw in multiple actors and destabilize already strained diplomatic efforts elsewhere in the region. For Arab states that have recently normalized relations with Israel, a renewed northern war could complicate their political calculus and test newly built partnerships. Economically, Lebanon stands at a critical juncture. Its currency has collapsed, inflation is soaring, and millions face fuel and food shortages. Another conflict would deepen that crisis and strain international aid networks already stretched thin. Israel, meanwhile, is balancing domestic security concerns with the costs of maintaining a long-term military presence near the frontier. Analysts note that both sides face internal pressures that make escalation risky, but also compromise decision-making. Globally, the implications extend far beyond the hills of the Galilee or the Bekaa Valley. Energy routes through the eastern Mediterranean, including recent natural gas discoveries, depend on regional stability. Shipping lanes and trade agreements linking Europe, the Middle East, and Asia are vulnerable to disruption if new conflict breaks out. For international markets, even the perception of instability can influence oil prices, investor confidence, and humanitarian aid priorities. While the world's attention often shifts quickly from one crisis to another, moments like these reveal how interconnected stability truly is. Every flare-up along this small frontier reverberates through the larger system of global diplomacy and economics. Peacekeeping forces, energy projects, refugee flows, and political alliances all hinge on preventing another war in this region. Even without open fighting, sustained tension erodes trust and weakens the capacity for cooperation on everything from trade to environmental policy. The question now is whether diplomatic channels can hold. Quiet negotiations continue behind the scenes, with envoys shuttling between Tel Aviv, Beirut, and international capitals. Both sides are signaling restraint, but history reminds us that in this region, restraint can unravel quickly. A single strike gone wrong, a misinterpreted radar reading, or a statement delivered at the wrong moment could tip the balance. For the moment, both governments emphasize that they seek stability. But along this border, stability has never meant peace, only pause. It is maintained not by trust, but by caution. As leaders exchange statements and forces reposition, the rest of the world watches carefully, aware that a spark in these hills could echo far beyond them. From the Mediterranean coast to the corridors of the United Nations, diplomats, analysts, and ordinary citizens all share one hope: that the lessons of the past 18 years will prevent another war from defining the next. You're watching WorldScope. Subscribe to stay informed as this and other global stories continue to unfold.